At 72, I expected family dinners to be about grandchildren's achievements and fond memories. What I didn't realize was that my son wasn't planning dinner conversation. He was preparing me to sign something I could never undo. "Dad, I've been thinking about what happened to Jim Morrison last month," Michael began, cutting his steak carefully. "Remember him? Lost nearly everything in that cryptocurrency scam. It got me worried about your situation." Michael, 45, had driven up from Vancouver with his wife Jessica and their twin boys. His concerns seemed genuine. Jim had been a family friend for decades, a successful contractor who'd fallen victim to online fraudsters at age 75. "That's different, Michael. Jim was chasing get-rich-quick schemes." "But that's exactly my point, Dad. You don't understand finance the way it works today. Algorithms, market volatility, sophisticated scams targeting seniors. I have an MBA from UBC and work for Morrison Asset Management. I see these problems daily." Jessica leaned forward with apparent concern. "Robert, you're 72 and managing everything alone. What if something like Jim's situation happened to you? Professional oversight could protect you." I almost laughed. They assumed I had maybe $3 million in retirement savings. They had no idea I was worth $15.7 million, built systematically over 40 years from a single hardware store through careful real estate investments, energy stocks, and patient value investing. "How much do you think I'm worth?" I asked quietly. Michael shrugged. $3 million, maybe 4. The house, some savings accounts, your old business assets. "And you want to manage this because at your age, capital preservation should be the priority, not risky growth strategies. After seeing what happened to Jim, I couldn't live with myself if you lost everything because I didn't try to help." The mention of Jim's tragedy made Michael's concerns seem reasonable. My grandsons were absorbed in their phones, wisely avoiding the tension. "I'll consider it," I said finally. Michael's smile held a hint of condescension. "I'll send you educational materials about modern portfolio theory and risk-adjusted returns. Help you understand how finance actually works in today's complex markets." Driving home to my modest Mount Royal bungalow, worth $2 million though I'd paid $95,000 in 1982, I wondered if Michael's concern was genuine or calculated. The Jim Morrison reference had been effective, but something felt orchestrated about the timing. Morrison Asset Management's information package arrived by courier 3 days later. 47 glossy pages of marketing materials promising sophisticated investment strategies for discerning high net worth individuals. I studied every page with the methodical attention I'd applied to business decisions for decades. Impressive presentation, professional testimonials, exponential growth charts. Morrison positioned itself as a boutique firm offering institutional-level expertise with personalized service. The fee structure was buried on page 34, 2.5% annually on managed assets, plus 20% performance fees on returns above benchmark. On my $15.7 million portfolio, they'd collect nearly $400,000 yearly before performance bonuses. That evening, Michael called with barely contained excitement. "Did you review the materials, Dad? Morrison's track record is exceptional. Average annual returns of 12.3% over the past decade. Even after management fees, you'd be millions ahead long term." "What about my current returns?" I asked. "Your current what? If I'm averaging 14.8% annually over the past decade, why would I switch to 12.3%? Silence stretched uncomfortably. When Michael spoke again, there was tension in his voice I hadn't heard before. "Dad, you haven't been averaging 14.8%. That's impossible for individual investors." He paused, then added almost defensively, "Look, Morrison's become incredibly competitive lately. They're really scrutinizing everyone's performance numbers. I can't afford to bring in clients with unrealistic expectations." Something about that last comment struck me as odd. Why would he be worried about what he could afford to do? "I made $1.2 million last year alone. Net profit after expenses and taxes. That can't be accurate. Can you email your portfolio summary? I think you're confusing capital gains with actual returns or missing tax implications." There it was. The assumption that I was confused about my own finances, too old and addled to understand basic investment concepts. "I'll think about it," I said and hung up. 2 weeks later, Michael appeared at my door unannounced on Saturday morning, looking agitated in casual clothes instead of his usual business attire. "Dad, I've been researching your holdings through public records. You own 23 commercial properties across Alberta, shares in 6 companies, a lumberyard worth more than my house. Why didn't you tell me you're worth over 20 million? You never asked. You assumed I was some doddering fool with pension saving. His face flushed. This isn't about assumptions. It's about risk management. What happens if you have a stroke? Make one catastrophic mistake. Remember what happened to Dad's friend Harold. Lost everything in that Ponzi scheme and died, broke in a nursing home. The mention of Harold stung. My father's old business partner had indeed been swindled out of his life savings at 78. You don't have to take those risks. Professional management eliminates personal decision-making errors. Once you transferred your full authority to us, you'd never have to worry about making a devastating mistake that could cost you everything. I felt a chill. Once transferred, I would never legally reclaim full control. The papers he wanted me to sign wouldn't just give him management authority. They'd give him permanent power of attorney. If something went wrong, I'd be helpless to stop it. For a moment, I wondered if he truly believed he was saving me. Then I'll deal with those problems if they occur. The pressure intensified over the following weeks. Jessica called regularly with subtle warnings about elderly people losing fortunes to online scams. My grandsons mentioned their economics teacher's advice about professional financial advisors during our monthly dinners. Grandpa, our teacher says individual investors usually underperform because they lack access to institutional research and analytical tools, Nathan offered helpfully. I could see Michael's coaching behind these conversations. He was systematically using my own family to pressure me into surrendering financial control. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving dinner in Vancouver. Michael stood during dessert, addressing the extended family of 15 people. I'm concerned about my father, he announced. Dad's 72, living alone, trying to manage a complex portfolio entirely by himself. It's dangerous for him, and frankly selfish toward the rest of us. Selfish? I set down my coffee cup. When something goes wrong, and it will, when he loses everything to bad investments or falls victim to scammers, who takes financial responsibility for his care? Us. The family. Jessica's relatives nodded sagely, sharing horror stories about elderly relatives who'd lost everything trying to manage their own investments. They were orchestrating a family intervention, convinced I was a helpless old man teetering on financial disaster. I need the bathroom, I said, excusing myself. In Michael's study, I made the ED most important call of this ordeal. Patricia, it's Robert Hennings. I need a comprehensive forensic investigation of Morrison Asset Management, everything. Performance records, client complaints, regulatory issues, ownership structure. Patricia Walsh was a forensic accountant I'd worked with during property acquisitions. Sharp, thorough, and absolutely relentless. Any particular reason for the deep dive? My son works there and desperately wants to manage my portfolio. I want to know exactly what I'd be getting into. How thorough should this investigation be? Leave no stone unturned. Money is no object. 3 weeks later, Patricia requested an urgent in-person meeting at the Fairmont Palliser. Morrison Asset Management, she began, spreading documents across our private dining room table. Surface appearance, legitimate licensed investment dealer with decent public reviews. Reality, significantly more problematic. She showed me damaging evidence systematically. Their advertised 12.3% return is cherry-picked data, excluding clients who left after poor performance. Real average, including all clients, 8.7%. What about Michael specifically? Below firm average at 8.2% annually since joining in 2018. His largest client pulled $2 million after losing $400,000 in bad options trades Michael recommended. 2 other major clients followed. His total assets under management dropped from $85 million to $31 million in 18 months. The picture crystallized. Michael wasn't trying to help his incompetent father. He desperately needed one major client to save his failing career. There's more, Patricia continued ominously. Morrison is under investigation by BC Securities Commission for excessive fees and elder abuse. Michael received 3 compliance warnings for making illegal promises to clients. She played a recording of Michael guaranteeing an 81-year-old widow risk-free 10% returns, a clear securities violation. Patricia's professional demeanor cracked for just a moment. Robert, if this were my own father, I'd call this systematic exploitation. This crosses the line from bad financial advice into deliberate elder abuse. Her words hit me harder than any spreadsheet could. Patricia, I need you to audit my own investment performance over 5 years. Every trade, every decision, professional analysis that would stand up in court. Why? Because my son thinks I don't understand finance. I want to show him exactly how wrong he is. 6 weeks later, Patricia delivered her comprehensive report. Robert, you're beating 97% of professional money managers. Your average annual returns of 14.6% are extraordinary for self-managed portfolios. The executive summary was devastating to Morrison's case. Subject's investment performance significantly exceeds market benchmarks and professional management standards. Risk-adjusted returns demonstrate sophisticated understanding of market dynamics and value investing principles. Your real estate investments alone generated $8 million in capital gains over the past decade. Stock picks outperformed the TSX by 4.2% annually. Risk management is textbook perfect. Never more than 5% in single investments, appropriate cash reserves, excellent diversification. Most damaging of all, comparative analysis shows Mr. Hennings would have earned approximately $3.2 million less over 5 years using Morrison Asset Management Services due to inferior performance and excessive fees. I smiled for the first time in months. Time to give my son exactly what he's been asking for. Chapter 6. Setting the Trap. I called Michael that evening. You're absolutely right about everything, I told him. I don't understand modern finance. The markets have become too complex for individual investors. I need professional guidance from people who really understand these things. His excitement was palpable. That's fantastic news, Dad. I can drive up this weekend and we'll organize your entire portfolio for professional management. Actually, I want to come to Vancouver, meet your team at Morrison, see the operation firsthand, understand what I'm entrusting my life savings to. Perfect. I'll arrange meetings with our senior partners, give you the full presentation. I'm bringing an accountant for independent verification. You understand? Due diligence. Absolutely. Transparency is Morrison's core value. We scheduled the meeting for Thursday. Morrison Asset Management occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown Vancouver tower. Expensive furniture, harbor views, everything designed to impress wealthy clients and justify premium fees. Michael met us in the marble lobby, practically vibrating with excitement about landing his father as Morrison's newest major client. Dad, meet Patricia Walsh, the forensic accountant I mentioned. 3 Morrison executives joined us in the mahogany boardroom. James Morrison, founder, Sarah Chen, client relations, and David Blackwood, chief investment officer. Morrison launched into his polished presentation about the firm's history, philosophy, and track record. Charts showed steady growth. Testimonials praised personalized service. We're genuinely excited about working with someone of your experience, Mr. Hennings. I'm still confused about fees, I said. 2.5% annually plus performance incentives. Industry standard for boutique wealth management, Patricia spoke up. Could you provide independently audited performance data for all client portfolios over 5 years? Our marketing materials clearly show 12.3% average annual returns over the past decade, Sarah Chen replied smoothly. I nodded to Patricia, who opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. Let's read the client file, she said simply. Patricia slid the bound report across the table to Morrison first. Executive summary on page 3. Morrison opened to page 3, and his confident smile evaporated as he absorbed the numbers. Annual returns of 14.6%, risk-adjusted and independently verified, Patricia said calmly. Mr. Hennings has consistently outperformed professional managers. The room fell silent. Morrison attempted damage control. Past performance never guarantees future results. Markets are becoming increasingly unpredictable. Michael jumped in desperately. Dad, you've been lucky, but what happens when you experience major losses? Stood up slowly. Gentlemen, I have one final question before I decide. The room focused on me intently. Patricia opened the manila folder and connected her laptop to the wall speakers. Michael's voice suddenly filled the boardroom, crystal clear. Mrs. Foster, I personally guarantee you'll see at least 10% annually with absolutely zero risk of loss. Morrison has proprietary strategies that completely eliminate downside exposure while maximizing profit potential. You cannot lose money with us. I stake my professional reputation on it." The recording continued for 30 seconds of Michael promising risk-free guaranteed returns to an elderly widow, the most serious securities violation possible. When it finished, no one spoke. No one even moved. Morrison's face had gone white. He looked at Michael, then at his colleagues, then back at Michael. "Hand over your badge. Do not contact any clients. Legal will follow up." Sarah Chen was already reaching for her phone. "I'm calling. Security." Michael's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish drowning in air. "That was recorded 3 months ago," I said quietly. "The client lost $200,000 following those guaranteed strategies." I walked toward the door. Actions have consequences. Patricia and I walked to the elevator in complete silence. Michael didn't follow us. He couldn't. Security was already escorting him out through a side exit. In the parking garage, Patricia finally spoke. "That was brutal. It was necessary. Your son's career just ended in that boardroom. Morrison will make sure he never works in finance again." I thought about that as we drove away. Michael had spent months trying to convince me I was incompetent, planning to strip away my legal authority over my own money. Now, his colleagues had stripped away his authority in less than 5 minutes. "He made his choice," I said. Patricia nodded. "The Securities Commission will be very interested in that recording. This won't end with just getting fired." Good. That evening, alone in my Calgary house, I poured myself a scotch and sat in my study. My phone had been ringing all afternoon. Michael calling, Jessica calling, even the boys trying to reach me. I didn't answer. Tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. Within days, the BC Securities Commission filed charges against Morrison and Michael. The evidence Patricia gathered accelerated their investigation dramatically. What we'd uncovered was worse than a simple fraud scheme. It was a systematic betrayal of trust. Elderly people who'd worked their entire lives, saved their money, and then been deliberately targeted by people they thought they could trust. Michael called the night charges were announced. His voice was hollow, defeated. "Dad, I've been suspended. Morrison terminated me. Jessica's filing for divorce. You should have considered those consequences before deciding I was too incompetent to manage my own money. Could you loan me money for legal defense?" The audacity of the request stunned me. "You spent months trying to convince me I was senile so you could steal my portfolio. Now you want me to pay for your criminal defense attorney? I never meant to hurt you. You meant to take control of my money while I lost all legal authority to stop you. You were willing to let me die, believing I was incompetent." The rest unfolded, with the cold inevitability of justice finally served. Michael pleaded guilty rather than face trial. 2 years in federal prison. Morrison Asset Management dissolved. James Morrison got 4 years. Jessica called once more. "You could have helped him instead of destroying him. I could have enabled his criminal behavior. There's a significant difference." But her words echoed in the silence of my house that night. Had I destroyed my own son, or had I simply refused to let him destroy me? 6 months later, my grandson Nathan called wanting to understand what happened with his father. I explained everything, how Michael tried convincing me I was incompetent, how his company systematically defrauded elderly clients, how I discovered and documented the truth. "Could you teach me about investing, Grandpa?" That conversation led to monthly video calls with both boys, teaching them fundamental principles: buy low, sell high, diversify holdings, never invest more than you can lose, always conduct thorough research. Michael was released after 18 months. He called immediately. "Dad, I want to apologize sincerely for treating you like you were incompetent, for putting my financial interests ahead of your well-being and security." Apology accepted. We talk occasionally now. He works as a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing company. Honest work, paying a fraction of his Morrison salary, but work he can respect. He's dating a teacher who doesn't care about his criminal record. He seems genuinely committed to rebuilding his life ethically. Last month, he asked me to teach him about legitimate investing. Not to manage your money, he clarified quickly, just to understand how you built wealth honestly. Understanding finance isn't about algorithms or complex derivatives, I told him. It's about human psychology, fear, greed, patience, discipline. Markets are people making decisions. Understand people, understand markets. Is that how you beat the professionals? I didn't beat them by being smarter. I beat them by being more patient and taking calculated risks while they chased quarterly performance bonuses. Today, my portfolio is worth $18.3 million. My returns continue exceeding market benchmarks and outperforming professional managers. My grandsons are studying business and asking thoughtful questions about ethical wealth building. Michael is slowly learning that genuine success comes from creating value rather than extracting it from vulnerable people. But something between us broke that can never be fully repaired. We will never have the easy, trusting relationship we once had. Some betrayals leave permanent scars, even after forgiveness. The moral isn't complicated. Never underestimate people based on age or assumptions. Decades of experience and accumulated wisdom shouldn't be dismissed simply because someone has impressive credentials or works for a prestigious-sounding firm. My son thought I didn't understand finance. What he failed to grasp was that the kind of finance I practiced, based on patience, research, ethical behavior, and long-term value creation, was the only kind that truly matters. The auditor read the files, all right, and those files told a story my son never expected to hear. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, feel free to check out my playlist. Take care.